last video, we covered making basic functions, but now let's look at how we can create a custom function to do something in our game. One of the main components of the game we're making in this series is having exploding parts falling from the sky. Let's create a function that makes these exploding parts. To start with, I've copied the exploding part that we made in an earlier video. The code in the part script has a few modifications, but it's basically the same script as we made earlier. Feel free to pause the video if you want to read through the script, or look at the code in the description. So the first thing I'm going to do is move this part from the workspace to server storage. Now server storage is a place in the Explorer where we can put things that we want to use later, but we don't want them showing up in our game. If you want something to show up in the 3D space, remember that it has to be in the workspace. If something is in server storage, it won't show up, and the scripts that are inside it won't run when the game starts. Now let's make a script in ServerScript service that'll make copies of this exploding part and put the copies into the workspace. First, we're going to make a variable for this part called explosionPart, and make sure we set it to look inside of game.ServerStorage.ExplosionPart. Now, let's make a function that makes copies of this part. I'm going to start off with local, then function, then I'm going to name it createExplosionPartCopy, and put in the open and close parentheses. Now inside this function, I'm going to make a new variable for the copy of the part, and I'm going to name it explosionPartCopy. Now for the value. If you ever want to copy a part or any other kind of Roblox object inside of code, you can use the clone function. We simply use a variable for this part, so explosionPart, then colon, then clone, open and close parentheses. Clone will make an exact copy of this part, and we're storing this copy into the explosionPartCopy variable. Now notice that this copy will also have the script that's inside of the part. We also have to make sure that this copy shows up in the game, and we can do this just by setting its parent to game.Workspace. So now that we have our function, remember that we have to call it, otherwise none of this code will get run. I'm going to set up an infinite loop down here by just typing while true do. Inside the loop, I'm going to call the function createExplosionPartCopy. And as always we have to do with infinite loops, we have to include a wait. In this case, we'll just wait a couple seconds. So if we run the game now, we'll see a steady stream of parts falling down and exploding. Remember that these parts are copied with the script that we just wrote, but they're exploding because of the code that's inside this script, that's inside the part that's being copied.